My husband gave me a birthday gift, a romantic dinner with his ex. He wanted the two of us to become friends because she would always be part of his life. When I woke up that morning, I was excited. My husband, Daniel, had been acting secretive for weeks, dropping hints that he had something special planned for me. I assumed it was a romantic getaway, or maybe a surprise party with close friends and family. I even went to work with a goofy smile on my face, thinking, wow, maybe after 5 years of marriage, he's finally learning how to be spontaneous. All day, I kept checking my phone, waiting for a message from him, but he stayed quiet. That only made me more excited. I pictured him at home decorating, maybe buying me flowers, maybe even writing one of those awkward little notes he rarely writes, but that always make me cry. When I finally came home, he was standing in the kitchen, already dressed in a crisp white shirt and navy blazer. His hair was neatly styled, and he smelled faintly of cedarwood cologne. The sight of him like that made my heart flutter, and for a second, I thought, this is it. He planned something truly romantic. Happy birthday, love, he said, smiling. He kissed me lightly on the lips, then grabbed his keys. Get dressed. I made reservations. Reservations? I asked, a little surprised. Where are we going? He grinned. You'll see. So I rushed to get ready, slipping into a black dress he'd always said was his favorite. I even wore the silver earrings he gave me on our second anniversary. I wanted the night to feel perfect. But when we pulled up in front of an upscale Italian restaurant, my excitement shifted into confusion. Standing right there at the entrance, waiting for us, was someone I recognized immediately, though I hadn't seen her in years, his ex. Clara. My stomach dropped. She looked stunning, of course. Long auburn hair, flawless makeup, a fitted red dress that screamed confidence. She waved at us as if this was the most natural thing in the world, like we were all old friends catching up. I turned to Daniel, whispering harshly, "What the hell is she doing here?" He squeezed my hand like he was calming a child. "Don't freak out, okay? It's your birthday. Just trust me." Trust him? He had brought her to my birthday dinner. We walked inside together, Clara leading the way as if she belonged by his side. My chest felt tight, but I forced a polite smile as we were seated at a candle-lit table. "To the birthday girl," Clara said cheerfully, raising her glass once we had ordered drinks. "Daniel told me so much about how special you are." I blinked, stunned. My own husband sat there, nodding along, as if this situation was perfectly acceptable. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "Okay, what's going on? Why is she here?" I demanded, keeping my voice low but firm. Daniel looked at me, calm as ever. "Because, love, Clara is important to me. She always will be." And I thought, what better way to celebrate you than by bringing together the two most important women in my life? I froze. My heart slammed against my ribs. The two most important women in his life? Clara reached across the table, her hand almost brushing mine. "He's right. I know it might seem weird at first, but Daniel and I have such a long history. We've decided we don't want to lose each other, even if we're not together anymore. I hope you and I can be friends." Friends? With the woman who once shared his bed, his secrets, his life? I stared at Daniel, waiting for him to laugh, to say it was some elaborate joke, but he just sipped his wine, watching me carefully, as though he was studying my reaction. The rest of the dinner was a blur. Clara carried most of the conversation, reminiscing about trips she and Daniel had taken, little inside jokes that I wasn't part of, stories about the old days, and the worst part? Daniel laughed along with her. Sometimes he looked at her in that way, like she was still familiar, still his safe place. Meanwhile, I sat there, picking at my pasta, smiling tightly when they looked at me. But inside, I felt like I was being tested, like this whole dinner wasn't for me at all, but for them. When dessert arrived, a slice of tiramisu with a candle in it, Daniel sang happy birthday softly. Clara joined in, her voice light and teasing. I made a wish, but I couldn't bring myself to blow out the candle. Later, as we drove home in silence, I finally asked, "Why would you do that to me? On my birthday of all days?" He kept his eyes on the road, his jaw tight. "Because, love, Clara isn't going anywhere. I needed you to see that. She'll always be a part of my life. If you can't accept that, then maybe we have a bigger problem." His words hit me like a punch. I didn't say anything else the whole way home, but that night, lying in bed beside him, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. Why was Clara still so important to him? Why did he insist on forcing her into my life? And most of all, why did I get the feeling that this dinner was just the beginning of something much bigger? I barely slept that night. Daniel lay beside me, breathing evenly, as if nothing had happened, while my mind spun in circles. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Clara's face, that easy smile she gave him, the way he laughed at her jokes like no time had passed. At some point, I got up, padded into the kitchen, and sat in the dark with a glass of water. I couldn't shake the feeling that my marriage had just shifted, that some invisible line had been crossed. The next morning, Daniel acted as if everything was perfectly normal. He kissed me on the forehead, handed me a coffee, and left for work. No apology, no explanation, just routine. I wanted to scream. Instead, I called my best friend, Hannah. She had known Daniel and me since college, and if anyone could give me perspective, it was her. "You're kidding me," she said after I told her about the dinner. "He really brought his ex to your birthday? What kind of twisted gift is that?" "I don't know," I whispered, my throat tight. He said she's always going to be a part of his life, and I don't understand why. There was a long pause. Then Hannah asked, do you think he still loves her? The words lodged in my chest like glass. I hadn't let myself consider that, not fully. But now, hearing it out loud, I felt cold all over. I don't know, I admitted. But the way he looks at her, it's not how a man looks at just a friend. For the rest of the day, I couldn't focus. I kept replaying moments from the dinner, Clara's hand almost touching mine, the way Daniel's eyes softened when she spoke, how comfortable they were together compared to the stiffness between him and me. By the time Daniel came home, I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to let this go unaddressed. As soon as he set his briefcase down, I crossed my arms. We need to talk, he sighed, already annoyed. About what? About Clara. His jaw clenched. What about her? Daniel, I need to know. Why is she still such a big part of your life? Why would you put me in that position? On my birthday? He rubbed his temples like I was giving him a headache. Because I don't want to lie to you. Clara isn't just some fling from my past. She was my first real love. We built years together, and even though it didn't work out romantically, I refused to cut her out of my life. I felt my stomach twist. So what? I'm just supposed to accept her being around all the time? Pretend it doesn't bother me? He looked me dead in the eye. Yes. Because if you love me, you'll understand. I'm not choosing between you and her. You both matter. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You can't have it both ways, Daniel. That's not how marriage works. His voice hardened. Then maybe you don't really understand me at all. That night, we barely spoke. The silence between us was heavier than words. But a few days later, things took an even stranger turn. I came home early from work, and as I walked up the stairs to our apartment, I heard laughter. A woman's laughter. My chest tightened instantly. I unlocked the door and stepped inside, and there she was, Clara, sitting on my couch with Daniel. They both looked up at me like it was the most natural thing in the world. Hey, love, Daniel said casually, as if I were just coming home to a roommate. Clara stopped by to drop something off. Hi, Clara said brightly, though there was a flicker of tension in her eyes. I just stood there, frozen, my hands gripping my bag. She stopped by? Daniel nodded. Yeah, I told you. We're still friends. You should get used to seeing her around. Used to it? My own husband was telling me to get used to another woman in our home. I excused myself to the bedroom, locking the door behind me before I broke down in tears. But as I sat there, I realized something important. Clara had looked nervous when I walked in, almost guilty. And that's when the doubt sank in like poison. What if they weren't just friends? What if this was more than Daniel was admitting? The thought haunted me for days. I tried to shake it, but every little thing added fuel to the fire. The way he smiled at his phone sometimes, the nights he came home late, the sudden bursts of secrecy. Finally, I decided I needed answers. The next time Daniel left his phone on the nightstand while he showered, I picked it up. My hands trembled as I opened his messages, telling myself I just needed reassurance. At first, I didn't find much. Work chats, group texts, nothing alarming. But then I saw her name, Clara. I tapped it open, and what I found there made my blood run cold. The messages weren't romantic, not exactly, but they weren't innocent either. Late-night texts, inside jokes, things he never shared with me, and one message, just from the night before. Daniel, I don't know what I'd do without you. I dropped the phone like it had burned me, because in that moment, I realized something terrifying. Maybe Daniel wasn't cheating. Maybe he wasn't even in love with Clara anymore. But she had a piece of him that I would never touch, and he wasn't willing to let it go. After finding that message, I couldn't look at Daniel the same way. We still went through the motions of being a married couple, sharing meals, sleeping in the same bed, but there was a crack between us now, a crack that kept widening with every glance, every silence. I tried to convince myself that maybe I was overreacting. Maybe his message, I don't know what I'd do without you, wasn't as heavy as it sounded. People said things like that to friends, right? But deep down, I knew. I knew that what they had wasn't just friendship. It was something else, something that blurred every line. And the worst part? Daniel didn't even try to hide it anymore. He invited Clara over again the following weekend. I was in the kitchen preparing coffee when I heard them laughing in the living room. That same easy, intimate laughter. The kind of laughter he and I used to share before everything felt so forced. When I carried the tray into the room, Clara looked at me with a smile that was too sweet, too polished. Oh, we were just talking about that time Daniel and I got stuck in Paris during that storm. Do you remember that, Daniel? He grinned. Of course I do. We ended up sleeping in the airport lounge, remember? That was wild. And then it happened. He looked at her with this softness in his eyes, the kind of look you can't fake. Something inside me snapped. Do you two realize how inappropriate this is? I blurted out, my voice sharper than I intended. Both of them went silent. Daniel's face darkened. What are you talking about? I set the tray down harder than necessary. This. All of this. You sitting here laughing like old lovers while I serve you coffee in my own house? Do you think this feels good for me? Clara's smile faltered. For the first time, she looked uneasy. I didn't mean to overstep. I value our connection, and I thought— You thought what? I snapped. That you could just slide back into his life like nothing changed? That you could sit on my couch in my home and act like you belong here? Daniel stood abruptly. Enough. Don't talk to her like that. The room went cold. He had raised his voice, but not at her. At me. I stared at him, stunned. You're defending her? Against your wife? His jaw tightened. I'm defending someone who means a lot to me. Clara hasn't done anything wrong. I felt the sting of tears, but I refused to let them fall. And what about me, Daniel? Do I mean anything to you anymore? Or am I just the outsider in my own marriage? The silence that followed was louder than any argument. Clara shifted uncomfortably, then stood. Maybe I should go. Daniel reached for her hand to stop her, but then he caught himself, pulling back too late. I saw it. The instinct. The impulse. And it broke me. After she left, I turned to him. My voice was quiet, trembling. Do you even love me anymore? He looked at me for a long moment, his face unreadable. Then he said, Of course I do. But love isn't black and white. There are different kinds. You'll never understand what Clara and I have. That was the first time I truly felt like I had lost him. That night, I lay awake while he slept beside me, my mind racing. I couldn't stay in this half-marriage, where another woman owned half his heart. But leaving him? That thought tore me apart too. I was stuck. Days passed like a blur. I went to work, smiled at coworkers, came home, cooked dinner. But inside, I was unraveling. Then, one evening, I came home earlier than expected. I walked through the door, and immediately, I knew something was off. The air smelled faintly of Clara's perfume. Sweet, floral, unmistakable. My heart dropped. I set my bag down slowly, listening. The living room was empty, but I could hear faint voices coming from the balcony. I crept closer, my pulse pounding. Through the glass door, I saw them. Daniel and Clara, standing close, too close. She had her hand on his arm, her head tilted toward him. He wasn't pushing her away. He wasn't resisting. He was just there, letting it happen. I couldn't hear every word, but I caught enough. Clara, you know she'll never accept this, Daniel. She doesn't have to. She just has to live with it. My breath caught. Live with it? Like this was permanent? Like she was permanent? I stumbled back, my hand over my mouth, desperate not to make a sound. My heart was breaking, and yet some part of me knew I needed to hear more, because deep down, I felt like they were hiding something bigger, and I was right. A few days later, while doing laundry, I found something tucked into Daniel's jacket pocket, a folded envelope. My curiosity burned, so I opened it. Inside was a letter from Clara. My hands shook as I read it. Daniel, thank you for being honest with me. I know this arrangement isn't easy, but I promise I'll never force you to choose. We both know the truth. What we had will never really go away, and maybe she'll come to see that in time. Yours always, C. I dropped the letter, my vision blurring. Yours always. It wasn't just friendship. It wasn't just nostalgia. It was something living, breathing, and still binding them together. And suddenly, my marriage felt like a cage I couldn't escape. The letter haunted me. I carried it in my pocket for days, reading it again and again, as if the words might somehow change. Yours always. Every time I saw that phrase, I felt like I was being shoved out of my own marriage. Finally, I couldn't hold it in anymore. One night, after dinner, I set the envelope on the table between us. Daniel was scrolling on his phone, barely paying attention. What's this? He asked, glancing at the letter. You tell me, I said, my voice sharp. He opened it, and I watched his expression shift. Annoyance, then guilt, then anger. You went through my things? I clenched my fists. Don't you dare turn this on me. I had to find out through a letter that your ex is writing to you like she's still yours. He shoved the paper back into the envelope. It's not what you think. Oh, really? Because it looks exactly like what I think. It looks like she still has a claim on you, like you've never actually let her go. He slammed his hand on the table, making me flinch. I told you from the beginning, Clara will always be a part of my life. That doesn't mean I don't love you. My voice cracked. Then why do I feel like the second choice in my own marriage? The silence that followed was unbearable. He didn't deny it. He didn't rush to reassure me. He just sat there, jaw tight, eyes full of something I couldn't read. That silence told me everything. The next morning, I made a decision. If Daniel wouldn't give me answers, then Clara would. I waited until Saturday, when I knew Daniel had a work conference. Then I found Clara's address. It wasn't hard. She still lived in the same apartment across town. When she opened the door, her eyes widened. Oh, it's you. Yes, it's me. My voice shook, but I forced myself to stand tall. We need to talk. She hesitated, then stepped aside. Fine. Come in. Her apartment was exactly what I expected. Neat, stylish, cozy in a way that felt lived in. There were framed photos on the shelves, her with friends, her on vacation, even one of her and Daniel from years ago. She hadn't taken it down. I sat on the couch, clutching my bag like a shield. Clara poured 2 glasses of water, then sat across from me. So, what do you want to know? I took a deep breath. Why are you doing this? Why can't you let him go? She tilted her head, almost amused. Let him go? You think it's that simple? Yes, I snapped. He's married. To me, whatever you had, it's over. Her smile was small, almost pitying. You don't understand. It's never really over with Daniel. You don't know him the way I do. I felt heat rising in my chest. Then explain it to me, because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're trying to sabotage my marriage. Clara sighed, leaning back. Look, I'm not trying to steal him from you. If I wanted him, I could have had him years ago, but Daniel and I share something deeper than you realize. We went through things together that you'll never touch. That kind of bond doesn't just disappear because he put a ring on your finger. Her words sliced through me. So what? I'm supposed to just accept that I'll never have all of him? She didn't answer. And that silence, her calm acceptance, hurt more than if she'd admitted outright that she wanted him back. Finally, I stood. If you care about him at all, you'll back off, because you're destroying us. Clara's eyes softened for a second, like she almost felt sorry for me. You really don't get it, do you? I don't have to do anything. He's the one who keeps coming back to me. He's the one who won't let go. My breath caught. For a moment, I couldn't speak, because deep down I knew she was right. When I left her apartment, I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me. I thought confronting her would give me clarity, maybe even strength. Instead, I felt weaker than ever. That night, Daniel came home and immediately noticed something was off. What happened? He asked. I looked at him, my throat burning. I went to see Clara. His face hardened. You had no right. No right? I laughed bitterly. She's in our lives whether I want her there or not, and you expect me to stay silent? She told me the truth, Daniel, that you're the one who won't let go, that you're the one who keeps her close. His silence confirmed it. Tears spilled down my cheeks. Do you even realize what you're doing to me? To us? For the first time, I saw guilt flicker in his eyes, but instead of apologizing, instead of reaching for me, he whispered, You don't understand. You never will. That night, I slept on the couch, and as I lay there, staring at the ceiling, one thought consumed me. If Daniel couldn't let Clara go, then maybe the only choice left was for me to let him go. I didn't want to admit it, but the thought of leaving Daniel started to creep into my mind more and more. The nights on the couch turned into entire weekends of distance. I found myself avoiding him, timing my mornings so we wouldn't bump into each other in the kitchen, faking late work nights just to stay away. The man I once loved so fiercely now felt like a stranger, and worse, like a stranger who belonged to someone else. But every time I tried to imagine actually packing my things, actually walking away, my chest tightened with panic. I still loved him. God help me. I still loved him. One night, Hannah came over. She took one look at me, pale and exhausted, and shook her head. You can't live like this, she said firmly. This isn't a marriage. It's a war zone. I know, I whispered. But what if I leave and regret it? What if I'm throwing away the best thing I'll ever have? The best thing? She frowned. Sweetheart, if this is the best thing, then you deserve better. Her words stung because they rang true. After she left, I sat alone in the quiet apartment, staring at the framed photo of Daniel and me on our wedding day. The way he had looked at me then, with joy, with certainty, it felt galaxies away from how he looked at me now. But then, something strange happened. The next morning, Daniel surprised me by making breakfast. Pancakes, coffee, orange juice. It was the first time in weeks he'd done something thoughtful without being asked. Why are you doing this? I asked cautiously. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept. Because I don't want to lose you. For a split second, hope bloomed in my chest, but then the doubts crashed in. Then let her go. His face clouded over, the hope gone as quickly as it had appeared. It's not that simple. I slammed my fork down. Stop saying that. Stop acting like I'm too naive to understand. What is it about her that makes her untouchable? What does she have that I don't? Daniel stared at me for a long moment. Then he said something that nearly knocked the air out of me. She saved my life. I froze. What? He leaned back in his chair, his eyes far away. Years ago. Before you, I went through something bad, something I never told you about. Clara was there. She pulled me through when no one else could. I don't know how to exist without that connection. My mouth went dry. What happened, Daniel? He hesitated, then shook his head. It's not something I can talk about. Not yet. I stared at him, torn between sympathy and rage. Part of me wanted to reach out, to comfort him. But another part screamed inside, if you can't tell me your wife, then what kind of marriage do we even have? Later that day, as if the universe wanted to twist the knife, I ran into Clara again. I was leaving the grocery store when she appeared, almost as if she'd been waiting. We need to talk, she said, her expression serious. I almost walked away, but something in her voice made me stop. Against my better judgment, I followed her to a nearby cafe. She ordered tea. I ordered nothing. I just sat there, arms crossed, glaring. What could you possibly have to say to me? I demanded. Clara looked me straight in the eye. You need to know the truth about Daniel. I stiffened. What truth? She took a breath, her hands tightening around her cup. A few years ago, before you came into the picture, Daniel was in a very dark place. She trailed off, biting her lip. Let's just say he almost didn't make it. I was the one who stopped him from doing something irreversible. That's why he clings to me. It's not romance. It's survival. My stomach dropped. I searched her face for any sign of manipulation, any smugness, but she wasn't gloating. She looked haunted. I'm not telling you this to hurt you, she continued softly. I'm telling you because you're married to him and you deserve to understand. He doesn't lean on you because he doesn't want you to see him that broken, but he leans on me because I already have. Her words cracked something inside me. For the first time, I didn't just see Clara as the enemy. I saw her as the keeper of a piece of Daniel's pain that he had never trusted me with. When I got home, I found Daniel in the living room. He looked up, surprised by the expression on my face. I know, I said quietly. His eyes widened. She told you. I nodded. Why didn't you? His voice broke. Because I didn't want you to see me like that. Weak, helpless, broken. Clara saw me at my worst. I wanted you to only ever see the best parts of me. For the first time in weeks, I saw tears in his eyes, real tears. And in that moment, I felt something shift. Yes, I was still angry. Yes, I was still hurt. But now I finally understood why he couldn't let Clara go. She wasn't just an ex. She was the witness to his deepest wounds. But that understanding came with a terrifying question. If Daniel only ever let Clara see the darkest parts of him, would he ever truly let me in? After Daniel's confession, my world didn't feel the same. For days, I walked around in a fog, trying to process everything. I had spent weeks believing I was competing with Clara for Daniel's love, but the truth was more complicated. It wasn't love, not in the traditional sense. It was something deeper, messier. Trauma binding two people together like an invisible chain. And where did that leave me? Every time I looked at Daniel, I saw both the man I married and the man I didn't know at all. A man carrying a past so heavy, he couldn't even share it with me. One night, I asked him again, why couldn't you tell me? If you trust me, why didn't you let me in? He looked at me, guilt etched into his face. Because, love, you still see me as strong, as capable, as the man who can take care of you. If I told you the truth about how broken I was back then, maybe you wouldn't see me the same way anymore. My throat tightened. But that's marriage, Daniel. Seeing each other at our worst and choosing each other anyway. Don't you get it? I want all of you, even the broken parts. For a second, I thought I saw relief in his eyes, but then he whispered, you say that now, but you don't know what it's like. Clara does. And just like that, the wall between us grew taller. The next day, Hannah came over again. I told her everything. Clara's confession, Daniel's vulnerability, all of it. She frowned. Okay, I get that he went through something dark and she helped him. That's powerful. But does that mean she gets to live in your marriage forever? That you have to share your husband because of it? I didn't have an answer. That night, I watched Daniel sleep beside me, his face peaceful in the glow of the lamp. And I wondered, was I cruel for wanting him to cut Clara off, knowing what she meant to his survival? Or was I a fool for tolerating a third person in my marriage? The following weekend, my worst fears came true. Daniel told me Clara was coming over for dinner. It'll just be casual, he said, as if that made it better. The three of us together. Maybe if we can all sit down, it won't feel so tense. I wanted to scream no, but part of me was tired of avoiding the truth. Maybe sitting across from her again would force everything out into the open. When she arrived, I felt the familiar knot in my stomach. She looked beautiful, of course, effortless, like she always did. But this time, I noticed something different. Her eyes weren't smug. They weren't playful. They looked tired. We ate in uneasy silence until Daniel excused himself to grab more wine from the kitchen. The moment he left, Clara set her fork down and looked at me. You hate me, she said softly. I swallowed. I don't hate you, but you're destroying my marriage. Her lips pressed into a thin line. I'm not trying to. I swear I'm not. But Daniel, he keeps coming back to me, even when I don't ask for it. Do you think that's easy for me? To be his crutch while knowing he belongs to you? Her words stunned me. For the first time, I realized Clara wasn't the villain I'd made her out to be. She was trapped too. Then why don't you walk away? I whispered. She looked down at her hands. Because part of me still feels responsible for him. If I let go and he falls apart again, I don't think I could live with that. Before I could respond, Daniel came back, smiling like nothing was wrong. See? You two are getting along already. Neither of us corrected him. After dinner, Clara left quietly, and I turned to Daniel. She's not the problem, Daniel. You are. You keep her tied to you because you're too scared to stand on your own. His face hardened. You don't understand what I owe her. No, I said firmly. I don't understand why you can't let your wife be the one you lean on. For once, he had no reply. That night, lying awake again, a horrible realization struck me. Maybe the real question wasn't whether Daniel loved Clara more than me. Maybe the real question was whether he ever truly believed I could handle all of him. I reached a breaking point. After weeks of confusion, jealousy, and half-truths, I finally realized something. I couldn't keep living in the shadow of another woman. Whether or not Daniel's connection with Clara was romantic didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that he gave her a piece of himself that he refused to give me, and I wasn't willing to live with that. The next morning, I sat across from him at the kitchen table, my coffee untouched. We need to make a decision, I said quietly. He looked up from his laptop, frowning. What decision? About us. About this marriage. I can't share you with Clara anymore. Either you let her go, or... My voice cracked, but I forced myself to continue, or we let each other go. The words hung in the air like smoke. Daniel's face hardened. Don't make me choose. You've already made your choice, I shot back. Every time you run to her instead of me, every time you defend her instead of me, you're choosing. His jaw clenched, his eyes flashing with anger, but behind that anger, I saw fear, real fear. Finally, he slammed his laptop shut and stood. You don't get it. You'll never get it. Then explain it to me, I shouted. Stop shutting me out. Stop treating me like I'm too fragile to handle the truth. He froze, his chest rising and falling rapidly. For a long moment, I thought he'd finally break, that he'd finally tell me everything. But instead, he whispered, "If I tell you, you'll never look at me the same." I swallowed hard. "Then let me decide that for myself." His eyes glistened with something raw, but he shook his head and stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. I sat there, trembling, the silence deafening. That night, he didn't come home. The next morning, I found his car still gone, his side of the bed untouched. My mind raced with possibilities. Was he with Clara? Was he avoiding me? Or was it something worse? I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my phone and called Clara. She answered on the second ring. "Hello? Is he with you?" I asked sharply. There was a long pause. Then she said quietly, "Yes. He came here last night." My stomach dropped. "Of course he did," I whispered bitterly. But before I could hang up, Clara's voice stopped me. "Wait. He's not here because of me. He's here because he's falling apart. You scared him. He thinks if he tells you the truth, you'll leave." Tears burned my eyes. "Then he doesn't trust me. And if he doesn't trust me, what's the point?" Clara hesitated, then said something I never expected. "Maybe you should come here. Talk to him. See for yourself." The last thing I wanted was to step foot in Clara's apartment again, but something in her voice, soft, almost pleading, made me pause, so I went. When she opened the door, she didn't look smug or victorious. She looked tired, worn out, like she hadn't slept either. She gestured for me to come inside, then quietly stepped aside. Daniel was sitting on her couch, his head in his hands. When he looked up and saw me, his eyes were red. "You came," he whispered, like he didn't believe it. I stood there, my heart pounding, because I need the truth, Daniel, all of it. No more secrets. He stared at me for a long moment, then glanced at Clara. She gave him a small nod, almost like she was giving him permission. And then, finally, he said the words I had been waiting to hear. "There's something you don't know about me. Something I've been hiding since before I met you. And once I tell you, you'll never see me the same way again." My chest felt tight as I stood in Clara's apartment, staring at my husband. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him, like the weight of his secret was crushing him into the couch. "Then tell me," I whispered. "Tell me what's been haunting you all this time." Daniel's hands trembled as he rubbed his face. He glanced at Clara again, almost as if he needed her strength to say the words. That alone made my stomach twist. Finally, he spoke. His voice was raw. "It was years ago, before you, before everything. I was drowning. My career had just collapsed. My dad got sick and I lost myself. I didn't see a way out. I thought ending it all was the only option. I felt the blood drain from my face." He continued, his voice breaking. "One night I tried. I really tried. And Clara..." His voice cracked completely. "Clara found me. She stopped me. She saved me." Silence swallowed the room. I could barely breathe. My heart ached so badly I thought it might split in two. Not because of what he had confessed, but because I hadn't known. Because he hadn't trusted me with this part of him. I sank into the chair across from him, my hands shaking. "Why didn't you ever tell me, Daniel?" His eyes filled with tears. "Because I didn't want you to look at me like I was broken, like I was damaged. With Clara, I didn't have to hide it. She already saw me at my lowest. But with you, I wanted to be the man you deserved, the strong one, the safe one." My voice cracked. "Don't you see? That's all I've wanted, to know every part of you, even the broken parts. That's what marriage is supposed to be. You've been keeping me on the outside while letting her stay on the inside." Clara shifted uncomfortably, but she didn't interrupt. For once, she wasn't the center of this. Daniel leaned forward, desperation in his eyes. "I never meant to hurt you. I didn't know how to let you in without losing you." Tears burned down my cheeks. "But don't you see? By keeping me out, you've been losing me anyway." The room went quiet again, heavy with everything unsaid. Clara finally stood, grabbing her coat. "I should go," she said softly. She glanced at me, her eyes strangely gentle. "This isn't my place anymore." Daniel looked like he wanted to stop her, but she gave him a look, a final look, and then she was gone. For the first time in months, it was just me and him. No buffer. No excuses. Just us. I took a shaky breath. "Daniel, I need to know. Do you still love her?" He shook his head immediately. "No, not like that. What I feel for Clara isn't love, it's gratitude, guilt, a bond I couldn't explain. But you..." His voice broke again. "You're my wife. You're the one I chose. You're the one I want." His words should have comforted me, but all I felt was exhaustion. Because even if it wasn't love, even if it wasn't romantic, Clara still had something I didn't, and I wasn't sure if I could live with that. That night, we drove home in silence. He reached for my hand once, and I let him hold it, but the connection felt fragile, like glass ready to shatter. When we got back to the apartment, I went straight to the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. Daniel stood in the doorway watching me, his eyes red and tired. "What do we do now?" I whispered. He swallowed hard. "That's up to you. If you want me to cut her out completely, I will, but I can't pretend it won't hurt." I looked up at him, tears slipping down my face. And what if I say I can't do this anymore? What if I say it's too late? His expression broke me, pure devastation. For the first time since this nightmare began, I realized the power was in my hands. I was the one who had to decide if this marriage could survive the truth, or if the truth had already destroyed it. I barely slept that night. Daniel lay beside me, his breathing uneven, like even in his sleep he was bracing for the possibility of losing me. I stared at the ceiling, my heart torn in two. Part of me wanted to reach for him, to wrap my arms around him and remind myself of the man I fell in love with, the man who made me laugh until I cried, who whispered promises on our wedding day, who used to look at me like I was his entire future. But another part of me couldn't forget the months of lies, the nights spent on the couch, the way he had defended her instead of me. Even knowing the truth now, I couldn't erase the image of Clara sitting comfortably in our home, holding a part of him that he had never given to me. In the morning, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold. Daniel walked in quietly, like he was afraid of startling me. "Morning," he said softly. I didn't answer. I just stared into the mug, lost in thought. Finally, I looked up. "Do you realize what you did to me, Daniel? For months, you made me feel like I was competing with another woman for my own husband. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was?" His shoulders slumped. "I know. And I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just didn't know how else to survive." "Survive?" I repeated bitterly. "And what about me? What about us? While you were surviving with her, I was slowly dying in this marriage." He sat across from me, his eyes pleading. "Please don't give up on me, on us. I'll do whatever it takes. Therapy? Cutting Clara off completely. Anything. Just don't walk away." The desperation in his voice made my chest ache. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe we could start over. But could I? That evening I met Hannah at a cafe. I needed someone outside of this storm to ground me. "You look exhausted," she said the moment she saw me. "I am," I admitted. "I feel like I'm being ripped in half. Part of me wants to forgive him. Part of me wants to run and never look back." She sipped her coffee, studying me. "The real question is, do you think you'll ever trust him again?" Her words hit hard. Trust. That was the wound that throbbed the most. Even if Daniel had been faithful, even if it wasn't love with Clara, he had still lied, still kept secrets, still made me feel like I was never enough. "I don't know," I whispered. Hannah reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "Then don't rush it. You don't owe him a decision today. Let him sweat a little. Let him show you, not just tell you, that he's willing to put you first." Her advice echoed in my mind all the way home. When I walked through the door, Daniel was waiting. He looked like he hadn't moved in hours, just sitting on the couch with his hands clasped, staring at the floor. "Where were you?" he asked softly. "With Hannah." He nodded slowly, his eyes searching mine. "And?" I took a deep breath. "And I'm not leaving. Not yet. But I'm not forgiving you either. Not yet. If you want me to believe in this marriage again, you're going to have to fight for it. You're going to have to prove that you choose me every single day. Not her. Not your fear. Me." Tears filled his eyes as he nodded. "I will. I swear I will." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But a part of me stayed guarded, walls built high around my heart, because I knew something he didn't. Once trust is shattered, love alone might not be enough to put it back together. That night, as I lay awake beside him, I whispered a thought I hadn't dared say out loud until now. If he fails me again, I'll walk away. And this time, I won't look back. The days that followed felt like walking on fragile glass. Daniel tried. I'll give him that. He started cooking dinner, leaving little notes for me on the counter, even texting me in the middle of the day like he used to when we were dating. To anyone else, it might have looked sweet. To me, it felt desperate, like he was trying to cover up a wound with bandages instead of actually healing it. And I couldn't help but wonder, was he doing this because he truly wanted to change, or just because he was afraid of losing me? One evening, he came home with flowers. My favorite, white lilies. He handed them to me with a hopeful smile. "They reminded me of you," he said softly. I wanted to melt. I wanted to forgive. But instead, I forced a small smile and placed them in a vase. "Thank you." But my tone was flat, and I knew he heard it. Later that night, we sat on the couch in silence, a movie playing in the background. He suddenly grabbed the remote, pausing the film. "This isn't working," he said. I turned to him, startled. "What do you mean?" "You're here, but you're not here," he said, his voice tight. "You're still shutting me out." A bitter laugh escaped me. "Me? You're accusing me of shutting you out?" His jaw clenched. "I'm trying, okay? I'm doing everything I can to fix this. But you keep holding it over my head like I'm already guilty for the rest of my life." My chest tightened. "Because I don't trust you, Daniel. Not yet. You don't just erase months of betrayal with flowers and pancakes." His eyes softened, but there was frustration too. "Then tell me what I have to do, please. Tell me how to make this right." I opened my mouth and realized I didn't know. I didn't know what would fix the ache inside me, what would erase the memory of Clara in our living room, laughing with him like I was the outsider. So instead, I whispered, "Time. I need time." He nodded slowly, though disappointment flickered in his eyes. Then I'll give you that, as long as it takes. For a while, he kept his word. He stopped mentioning Clara completely. He came straight home from work every night. He was present, attentive, careful. But here's the thing about broken trust. Even when the cracks are patched, you can still see them. Every time his phone buzzed, my heart raced. Every time he stayed late at work, I wondered if he was lying. Every time he looked distant, I feared he was thinking of her. One night, those fears got the better of me. He was in the shower, and his phone lit up on the nightstand. My hands moved before my brain could stop them. I picked it up, my stomach in knots. It wasn't Clara. It was a coworker, a group chat. Harmless. But the fact that I checked it all made me realize something terrifying. I was becoming someone I didn't want to be. Suspicious, paranoid, miserable. And then came the real test. A week later, Daniel came home looking pale. He set his bag down and sat heavily on the couch. "What's wrong?" I asked. He hesitated, then said, "Clara called me today." My blood ran cold. "And?" "She wanted to meet. She said she needs closure, that she can't move on until we talk one last time." I clenched my fists, my pulse racing. "And what did you say?" He looked at me, his eyes full of conflict. I told her no. I told her I can't see her anymore, that I'm choosing you. I froze. For weeks, I had begged him to cut her out. For weeks, I thought he never would. And now, finally, he had. But instead of relief, I felt something else. Something darker. Because if Clara was really out of the picture now, then I had no more excuses. No more scapegoats. If things still fell apart, it wouldn't be because of her. It would be because of us. When Daniel told me he had finally cut Clara off, I should have felt relieved. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt empty. It was like we'd spent so long fighting about her that, without her shadow between us, I no longer knew what our marriage stood on. Clara had been the wound, yes, but she had also been the excuse. And now that she was gone, all that was left was the raw truth. Daniel and I were strangers who shared a home but not a heart. The first few days after he ended things with her, Daniel tried harder than ever. He cooked my favorite meals, left sweet notes on the mirror, suggested we go on little weekend dates like we used to, and I played along. I smiled. I laughed when I was supposed to. I held his hand in public. But inside, something didn't feel right. One night, he surprised me with tickets to a concert I'd always wanted to go to. We dressed up, went out, and for a while, it felt almost normal again. But when the band played one of my favorite songs, I caught myself looking at him and realizing his eyes weren't shining the way they used to when he looked at me. He was trying. But trying isn't the same as loving. Afterward in the car, he reached for my hand. "See? We can get back to us. We just need to keep fighting for it." I forced a smile, but deep down, doubt gnawed at me. What if there is no us anymore? What if it died the moment Clara re-entered our lives, and we're just pretending to revive something that's already gone? The breaking point came a week later. We were cleaning up after dinner when Daniel suddenly said, "You're different." I froze. Different how? "You're colder. Distant. Even now that Clara's gone, you don't look at me the same way." I set the plate down too hard, the sound echoing in the kitchen. "And whose fault is that, Daniel? You broke something in me. Did you think I could just flip a switch and go back to being the wife who trusted you completely?" His jaw tightened. "I ended things with her. I did what you asked. What more do you want from me?" My throat tightened. "I want to feel like your wife again. Not your obligation. Not the person you're trying to patch things up with because you're scared of being alone." His face fell. "Is that really what you think this is? That I'm with you out of fear?" The silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. Finally, I whispered, "I don't know what this is anymore." That night, I slept on the couch again. Not because I wanted to punish him, but because the bed felt too heavy, too full of memories of what we used to be. Days passed. We barely spoke. The apartment felt colder, emptier. And in that silence, I started to wonder if maybe Clara hadn't been the real problem after all. Maybe she was just the symptom. The real problem was us. Because if our love had been unshakable, Clara never would have had a place in it to begin with. One evening, I sat by the window, staring at the city lights outside. Daniel walked in, hesitated, then sat across from me. "Tell me the truth," he said quietly. "Do you even want this marriage anymore?" His question cut deep, because the truth was, I didn't know. I looked at him, the man I once couldn't imagine living without, and whispered the words I had been afraid to say. "I want to, but I don't know if I can." His eyes filled with tears, but he didn't argue. He didn't beg. He just nodded, as if he had been expecting this all along. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. Clara may have been gone, but the damage she represented lingered. And now, the only thing left to decide was whether Daniel and I could rebuild from the ruins, or whether it was finally time to let go. The word divorce had always been something distant to me, something that happened to other people. Couples who gave up, couples who stopped trying. Not us. Not me and Daniel. But now, it lived in my chest like a shadow. I caught myself Googling lawyers late at night, my screen dimmed so Daniel wouldn't notice. I read articles about separation, about what happens when love isn't enough. And every time, my stomach twisted with guilt. Because despite everything, a part of me still loved him. The question was love enough to survive the wreckage we had become? One evening, I finally said it out loud. We were eating dinner in silence when I put down my fork and whispered, maybe we should separate. Daniel froze. His eyes lifted slowly, searching my face. You don't mean that. My throat burned. I think I do. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then he pushed his plate aside and buried his face in his hands. Please don't. Please, I'll do anything. Just don't give up on us. Tears welled in my eyes. I don't want to give up, Daniel, but I don't know how to keep going like this. I feel like I've lost myself in this marriage. I don't recognize us anymore. He reached across the table, grabbing my hand desperately. Then let's find ourselves again. We can go to therapy. We can take a trip, start fresh. Just don't walk away. Not yet. I wanted to believe him, but deep down, doubt lingered like smoke. That night, I lay awake again, staring at the ceiling, when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. A new message. From Clara. My chest tightened as I read it. I know I promised to stay out of your lives, but there's something you need to know. Something Daniel hasn't told you. Meet me tomorrow. Please. I sat up in bed, my pulse racing. What more could there possibly be? Daniel had already confessed his darkest secret. He had admitted his past, his pain, his dependence on her. What else could she have to reveal? The next day, against my better judgment, I met her at a quiet cafe across town. She looked tense, her eyes darting around as if she didn't want anyone to overhear us. I'm not here to make things worse, she said quickly. I meant it when I said I'd back off. But there's one last thing you deserve to know before you decide what to do. I folded my arms, my voice sharp. Then say it. Clara took a deep breath. The night I saved him. It wasn't just a one-time thing. Daniel and I kept it a secret from everyone. For months after, I was the only one who knew how bad it was. The only one who knew how close he still was to. She trailed off, her voice trembling. Let's just say it wasn't the only time I had to stop him. My blood ran cold. She leaned closer. I'm telling you this because if you leave him now, when he feels abandoned, I don't know what he might do. You need to understand. You're not just his wife. You're his anchor. If you walk away, I don't know if he'll survive it. Her words hit me like a wave. I left the cafe shaking, my mind spinning. Divorce had seemed like the logical next step, the only way to free myself from the pain. But now it wasn't just about me. It was about his life. That night, Daniel looked at me across the dinner table, his eyes tired and pleading. Did you meet her? He asked quietly. I froze. How did you... I know, Clara. I knew she'd reach out to you eventually. His voice cracked. What did she tell you? I stared at him, my heart aching. She told me the truth, that it wasn't just once, that she saved you more than once. His face crumpled, tears filling his eyes. He didn't deny it. He just whispered, I didn't want you to carry that weight. I swallowed hard, my entire body trembling. Daniel, what am I supposed to do with this? I was ready to leave. I thought I couldn't do this anymore. But now... Tears streamed down his face. Now you know why I can't lose you. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just deciding the future of my marriage. I might be deciding whether Daniel lived or fell apart completely. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt truly trapped. Leaving Daniel no longer felt like an act of self-preservation. It felt like a death sentence I might be handing him. Every time I imagined packing my bags, I also imagined Clara's words echoing in my head. If you walk away, I don't know if he'll survive it. But staying wasn't much easier. Staying meant swallowing my resentment, my broken trust, my sense of betrayal. It meant existing in a marriage where love felt tangled up with guilt and obligation. I didn't know which would destroy me faster, leaving him or staying with him. The next morning, I sat at the edge of the bed, staring at Daniel as he slept. His face was peaceful in a way I hadn't seen in months, like he'd finally found some relief in confessing the truth. But for me, the weight had only grown heavier. When he woke, he immediately reached for me, his hand covering mine. You're still here, he whispered, almost in disbelief. Yes, I said softly, but the word felt fragile, like it could shatter at any moment. Later that day, I met Hannah again. I told her everything. Clara's final revelation, Daniel's breakdown, the impossible choice in front of me. She stared at me, stunned. So now you're supposed to be responsible for his entire life? That's not fair. Not to you, not to anyone. I swallowed hard. But if I leave, and he... My voice cracked. If something happens, I'll never forgive myself. Hannah reached across the table, her eyes fierce. Listen to me. You are not responsible for saving him. You can love him, you can support him, but you cannot carry him. If he refuses to get help, that's on him, not you. Her words made sense, but my heart didn't want to believe them, because love doesn't always follow logic. That night, Daniel surprised me by bringing up therapy himself. I've been thinking, he said quietly, his hands fidgeting in his lap. Maybe it's time I talk to someone, not just about Clara, about everything. I can't keep putting this weight on you alone. Tears filled my eyes. Do you mean that? He nodded. If it's the only way to save us, then yes. For the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of hope. Not because everything was fixed. It wasn't. But because he was finally taking a step toward healing that didn't rely on me or Clara. Still, Doubts lingered. A week later, we sat in a therapist's office together. Daniel spoke in halting sentences about his past, his darkest thoughts, his fear of losing me. I sat beside him listening, my heart aching with every word. Afterward, the therapist looked at both of us. Healing is possible, but it's not going to happen overnight. You both need to decide if you're willing to do the hard work, not just for each other, but for yourselves. On the drive home, Daniel reached for my hand. I want this to work. I want us to work, even if it takes years. I squeezed his hand back, but inside I was still conflicted, because while I saw him trying, while I saw the man I loved fighting to surface again, I also saw how far we still had to go. That night, lying in bed beside him, I finally admitted the truth to myself. I wasn't staying just because I loved him. I wasn't staying just because I wanted to save our marriage. I was staying because I was terrified of what would happen if I didn't. And deep down, I knew that was a dangerous foundation for love. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I wasn't living a marriage anymore. I was living a negotiation with fear. Every day, I woke up asking myself the same question. If I leave, will he fall apart? If I stay, will I? Daniel tried. I'll never deny that. He went to therapy. He cooked for us. He held me when I cried, even though half the time it was because of him. But I couldn't shake the feeling that every effort was dripping with desperation, not love. He wasn't building a future with me. He was clinging to me like a lifeline, and I was drowning with him. One evening, after another tense silence over dinner, I finally said the words I'd been swallowing. Daniel, I can't keep living like this. He froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. What do you mean? I feel like I'm not your wife anymore. I'm your safety net, your anchor, the one thing standing between you and falling apart. But I can't be that forever. I can't be your reason to live. That has to come from you. His face crumpled, and for a moment I thought he might break down completely. But instead, he set his fork down and whispered, "So you're leaving?" My throat tightened. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out if there's anything left to save. He reached across the table, his voice trembling. There is. There has to be. I'll fight harder. I'll do whatever it takes. Just don't give up. Tears blurred my vision. That's just it, Daniel. I don't want you to fight harder for me. I want you to fight for you. Until you do that, we'll always be stuck in this cycle. The silence between us was unbearable. That night, I packed a small bag. Not everything. Not yet. Just enough to stay at Hannah's for a while. When Daniel saw me by the door, his face went pale. You're really leaving? He whispered. Not forever, I said softly. I need space. I need to figure out who I am outside of this marriage, outside of all this pain. And you need to figure out who you are without leaning on me or Clara. His eyes filled with tears. What if you don't come back? My heart broke. Then maybe that's the answer we both need. At Hannah's, I cried harder than I had in months, but there was also a strange sense of relief, like I could finally breathe without his weight pressing down on me. The days turned into a week, and then 2. Daniel texted me constantly at first, pleading, apologizing, begging me to return. But eventually, the messages slowed, and when they did, I started to wonder if maybe, just maybe, he was beginning to stand on his own. Then one night I got a letter. Not an email, not a text. A handwritten letter delivered to Hannah's door. It was from Daniel. I finally understand. I've been asking you to carry me when I should have been learning how to walk on my own. I don't know if our marriage can be saved, but I do know this. I'm finally ready to fight for myself. For the first time, I want to live for me, not just for you, not just out of fear. If you ever choose to come back, I'll be here. But even if you don't, thank you for showing me that I needed to stand on my own. I read the letter over and over, tears streaming down my face. For the first time, it wasn't a plea. It wasn't desperation. It was honesty, strength, growth. And that was when I realized my decision was finally clear. I stared at Daniel's letter for a long time, letting his words sink into me like slow rain after a drought. For months, I had been drowning in the weight of his fear, his secrets, his dependence. I had hated Clara, resented her, even envied her, only to realize in the end that she wasn't the real obstacle at all. The real obstacle was Daniel himself, and his refusal to stand on his own 2 feet. But now, for the first time, I saw a glimmer of someone who wanted to. I folded the letter carefully and placed it on the nightstand beside Hannah's couch. Then I lay awake, asking myself the hardest question of all. If he really does grow, if he really does heal, do I want to be there to see it, or is it too late for us? The next morning, I drove back to our apartment, not with bags packed, not ready to move back in, just to talk. Daniel opened the door, surprise flickering across his face. His eyes were tired, but softer than before. You came. I got your letter, I said quietly. He stepped aside to let me in. The apartment looked different, cleaner, lighter, almost like he'd been trying to make it feel new. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the same place where so many of our fights had begun. But this time, the air felt calmer. I meant what I wrote, he said softly. I don't want you to stay out of fear, and I don't want to hold on to you like a lifeline anymore. I want to stand on my own, even if it means standing without you. His voice trembled, but there was strength in it too. Tears welled in my eyes. That's all I ever wanted, Daniel. For you to choose life for yourself. Not for me, not for Clara. Just you. We sat in silence for a long moment. And then, finally, I spoke the words I had been carrying for weeks. I love you. But I think our love has turned into something neither of us can live inside anymore. We've both been clinging to the past. Me, to the man I thought you were, and you, to the person Clara helped you be. Maybe the kindest thing we can do is let each other go. His face crumpled, and for a moment I thought he would beg again. But instead, he nodded slowly, tears sliding down his cheeks. You're right, he whispered. As much as it hurts, you're right. I reached across the table and took his hand one last time. This isn't the end of your story, Daniel. It's just the end of ours. Promise me you'll keep going. I promise, he said, his voice breaking. When I left the apartment that day, I carried no bags, only the weight of goodbye. But for the first time in months, I also felt something else. Peace. Because love isn't always about holding on. Sometimes the bravest kind of love is knowing when to let go.